I'm Tim Ventura, and we're joined today by Dr. Natasha Vita-More, a pioneering leader and community organizer in life extension and superlongevity, and a proponent of human rights, morphological freedom, and the ethical means for human enhancement. Called an early adapter of revolutionary changes by Wired magazine and a role model for superlongevity by the Village Voice, she is on the faculty of Geneva College Longevity Science, a distinguished senior fellow at the Future of Mind Institute at FAU, and as a scientist, she achieved a scientific breakthrough in long-term memory in the field of cryobiology. Natasha holds a PhD from the University of Plymouth. Her dissertation covers the theory and practice of life extension. She also holds a Master's of Philosophy and Master's of Science degrees. She's been featured in over 24 televised documentaries and featured in high-fashion style magazines as well, such as Vogue. She joins us today to discuss lifestyle choices for health and longevity. But before we get into that, I do want to do my medical disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast reflect personal opinions and lifestyle choices and should not be taken as medical advice. I also want to remind viewers to consult their doctor before starting any supplements, beginning an exercise routine, or undertaking lifestyle changes. So Natasha, welcome. You are a major advocate for life extension and anti-aging research. Today's discussion comes from an online post that you did about your own lifestyle choices and habits. And you are one of the top subject matter experts in the world to discuss this. So I am so pleased to have you with me.
Thank you, Tim. I'm just absolutely delighted to be here and to share whatever knowledge I have from my own firsthand experience and what I've learned from others as well.
Well, so your PhD is focused on life extension, right? Again, from the University of Plymouth. You have a certification in exercise training and nutrition. You've completed training in meditation practices as well. So in terms of that subject matter expertise, your work is incredibly well grounded in science, but you're taking things beyond mere science as well, right? And this is where the lifestyle aspect of things comes into. A lot of that becomes daily routine, workout habits, diet, things like that, right? And this goes beyond, the textbooks. This is like putting things into practice.
Yes, yeah. I think what's really good is to read as much as possible, and textbooks are great. I'm an academic, so I really support the scholarship there. However, every person is different, and we need to discover, explore, and implement for ourselves what works best for us for our particular goals at any particular chronological age time frame in our lives. And it does change. My routine has changed at my later years. I'm in my 70s from when I was in my 50s, even back to my 30s. I've been athletic all my life as a dancer and a performer, so I know that the body changes and we have to change with it. Not only that, our psychology. And one thing that you mentioned, I think it's really important. The scientific rigor is exceptional, but we've got to know our own body, our physique, and our brain, and to understand where our neuroplasticity is at our different stages in life and how to really exercise that as well.
Well, that goes into actually, it's a later question, but that's an amazing point that you're bringing up. Exercise is not just for the body, right? We need to exercise our minds as well and take a holistic approach to this super longevity goal where we're keeping everything in tip-top shape.
That's right, the best we can. Yeah.
Well, so in prepping for our discussion, you researched the three most famous longevity experts, Peter Attia, David Sinclair, and Andrew Huberman, as well as their lifestyle and fitness routines. And you actually gave me a pretty lengthy AI response comparing what you do to what they do. I noticed a lot of similarities there, but I wanted to see what jumped out at you the most, and has comparing that led you to consider any changes in your own lifestyle?
Yeah, okay, that's great. I love this because very seldom do we look at what others are doing and learn from them, and then to use critical thinking actually and exploration in seeing what they're doing, if it could work for us, and how we're doing it differently. Because the three individuals that you mentioned have very different approaches.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say that none of them follow my approach or do the same that I do. And I think there's a number of different reasons for that. But let's start with Peter Attia's work first. He is focused on squaring the curve on longevity, meaning living to 100 in great health, 100 approximately. So his focus is on the centenarian decathlon, how to prepare our bodies for longer life so we live to our current health span, lifespan, maximum lifespan, in the best health possible. He's not looking beyond it. He's not looking at artificial intelligence or the nanomedicine or the advances in life extension that could increase the 100-year plus. He's looking at that particular 100-year time frame, and that's really good for many people. So his concept is to do, it's a pillar concept. It's based on 4 pillars of stability, strength, aerobic, and anaerobic exercise.
Mm.
All of these are great. So that's where he's located. I differ very much from that. I'm looking at so much more. I'm looking at neuroplasticity. I'm looking at high-end aerobics, looking at strength training, bodybuilding muscles. I'm also looking at fast twitch muscles like downhill skiing, fast-paced sports, as well as slow balance, yoga, Pilates, etc. And then I also work on the neuroplasticity, which I'm sure he does get into, but it's not mentioned in his pillars in that way. The second one, I think, and we can get deeper into this, but I just want to give a recap here for you. David Sinclair is very well known. He's probably the most famous longevity expert around today, based on a lot of his work, his association with Harvard, if that's a good thing. I don't know these days. People may not think so, but may think so. Harvard certainly has a reputation. And David Sinclair's work on epigenetics is very well known. However, his work is very straightforward. It's just get up off your butt or your rear end and move. And I really, really like that. Just move, do something. Now, his particular longevity routine is based on largely plant protein. He's
Mm.
not a strict vegetarian, but he goes more towards plant-based with some fish. Low calories, carbs, protein. He also practices intermittent fasting, which I do as well. And I think that's really important, but that's not mentioned in Peter Attia's particular pillars of exercise and longevity. Sinclair's routine integrates science-based longevity because he is a scientist and includes the time fasting, stress reduction, and sleep organization with daily routines like 100 push-ups per day and just moving and repeating this and doing some cold weather exercise as well. But he's not an athlete in the sense that maybe Attia is in his
Okay.
great form and sensibility. Getting to the third one that you mentioned, Huberman, Andrew Huberman's approach is very much like the bodybuilder athlete star physique. And I really love that about his work. He's very structured in his protocol, targeting different aspects of fitness, including endurance, strength, recovery, and high intensity training, which I like as well. And I think that each one of these their particular pillars, their practices, their theoretical approaches, and their practice-based approaches are all really, really good. But again, they're very different fundamentally, yet at the core, they all are living as healthy as possible. So they're very into health span as well as longevity.
Yeah, and that's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you for breaking that down for us.
You're
So
welcome.
there are so many different tangential aspects, so many roads that I could go down in terms of this. You did mention veganism. This has been an interest area for me. I'm going off my questions list a little bit, but so I went on kind of a personal quest, several months ago. I was like, what did human beings evolve to eat? And I found the plant-based diet stuff, which you mentioned. I found a fellow named Dr. Milton Mills on the East Coast who does a really amazing anatomical breakdown of carnivores, frugivores, and herbivores. And so I have gone most of the way towards plant-based, like you mentioned, Dr. David Sinclair has. But what I have found is the plant-based, I guess there's an agenda to veganism, right? For many, many reasons. And so I think they over-exaggerate some of the benefits. A little bit of protein is needed, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I tried out the vegetarian diet in my 30s, I guess my late 20s and 30s. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I really, I really love the idea theoretically, but in practice, it just simply didn't work. I was weak. I didn't have the stamina that I usually have. And my body simply needs the meat, the red meat. It needs the organs like liver and kidneys, and and those are very healthy to eat. And there's a part of me that is it's a push and a pull. For one thing, I'm an animal lover, and it pains me to think that we grow animals to kill them, to slaughter them, to eat them, and that's a very
Yeah.
difficult philosophical um, wrestling match I do in my own mind. But this is where we are today. And unless and until we can develop proteins that have the structure of meat that can suffice, it's what I have to do personally. And I try to buy grass-fed Angus meat. I don't try, I do. And free range and free roam, and maybe some of those labels, excuse me, maybe some of those labels are not authentic. There is a little bit of an integrity squishing there. Um, Not all labels tell the truth, so you have to be very careful in where you shop and what you buy. But bottom line, I am an animal. I'm a human. I'm a Homo sapiens sapien, and that's what I need for my own physicality. Um, but I have many vegetarian and vegan friends, and if that's what works for them, that's fine. I think we need to um, allow people to choose their lifestyle the way that works for them, um, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. And yes, this does harm animals, but it's again, it's something we're going to wrestle with for a long time, and I don't think there is any moral or even ethical balance there that will ameliorate that. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree. And yeah, I had a recent conversation with a friend who is a marathon runner, and her response, what I'd said was, I'm eating a high fiber diet, mostly plant-based, a little bit of meat every now and then. I was like, it seems to be, at least for the last few months, seems to be working really well for my body. I was like, what are your thoughts on that? And her response was, she said, I'm out on the road running these marathons. She's like, high fiber isn't going to work. And she's like, plant-based isn't going to do it. She's like, I need meat. So it's interesting. Like you just said, everyone's dietary needs are a little bit different, right? But you know,
Right. Yes. It's so true. Like I do high intensity sports when I can. It's like I love downhill skiing. Maybe I can't ski the moguls like I used to, but I still love it, as well as doing the Pilates and the yoga. And I love lifting weights. I love being in the gym. It makes my day, and I just love it. I can't do that on a vegetarian diet, but
yeah.
maybe other people don't need to do that. Maybe lifting weights or downhill skiing or fast-paced sports are not their thing, and that's fine as well. But I think again, so each person has to determine for themselves based on their analysis of their own body and their own needs.
Well, so segueing from diet itself, I wanted to get into new medications like Ozempic. That one made so many headlines over the last few months. It may still be making them. I'm not seeing it as much though, but I know 4 or 5 people who have taken it and lost significant amounts of weight. There are, of course, issues and limitations with it. Like it's kind of a hack or a cheat in some ways. And so when you quit taking it, your diet and your lifestyle hasn't changed, you tend to bounce back to where you were, right? But I'm wondering if newer medications like that are going to help people limit their calories overall and help increase health.
I'm on the fence with a lot of this, and I'm going to look at it as critically as possible. First off, we do have pretty much an epidemic of obesity, not just in
Yeah.
the United States, but in other countries in the world as well. Along with that, we've got diabetes, heart disease, various cancers, of course. But it's not just the obesity, it's the type of food that people are eating. And fast food, cheap food. If you go to a grocery store, you just look at the layout right in the front. The easy foods to pick up are the foods that have the most preservatives, pesticides, uh, awful ingredients, and additives, food coloring, so much sugar that they're unhealthy. Okay, that's so first off, where you get your food, what the food that you're buying. And most people don't have the time to read the labels, or they're
Mm.
just with a family of kids that are grabbing the donuts and whatnot, and they're tired. We could judge that and say a lot about it. And let's not go there. Let's deal with the problem. The problem is obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancers. But the leading cause of death is heart disease today.
Yeah.
Cancers, it's a back and forth between and there's various heart diseases and cancers. Dementia is on the rise as well. By 2050, it's going to triple in the world. So, what
Mm.
causes dementia? Too many sugars, as well as epigenetics, and it's also genetics and lifestyle, etc. Whole nother area, but we're seeing these incredible rises in unhealthy living and unhealthy people. So if we have to take a drug to help mitigate, ameliorate, and intervene, so be it. Not my first choice. I would rather people learn to do transcendental meditation, exercise, think, read, and have some guts and grit. But frankly, most people, it's just the way we are. We just don't want to have to do the hard work. We want the easy way. And if we're at a point where the easy way is going to help so many people, fine. Okay. So if we need to take a pill to help us stop the cravings of food, that's okay. So I'm for anything that's going to help change what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, it's not the way I would want to do it, but I'm a very disciplined person and I'm a follow through person. And I have many weaknesses. Those are just two strengths that I have. So other people have things better than me. And so maybe I would need to take a pill to help in certain areas. But you take a look at the level of depression and unhappiness is on the rise as well. Is that from our diet? Is it just the way we are? Is it part of evolution? What is going on? So, of course, people can stop complaining and playing victim. That would be a start. It's so popular now to be an influencer and a victim at the same time and have people feel bad and sorry for you. And then you get all the likes because you've had a hard time. I mean, so many people are complaining on and trying to outdo each other as how bad they have it or how many sick people they have in their family or how hard they have to work. And it's part of another type of epidemic of poor me. And certainly it makes sense that we have antidepressants and serotonin uptake inhibitors to help the people that are suffering from this. And perhaps maybe that's just the world that we live in today, where we do need to take these supplements because it just is too difficult to have the
Well,
grit. Yeah.
I mean, if I could interject,
Of course.
one of the impressions that I've strongly had is that we are still kind of in this post-pandemic bounce back phase, right? And I mean, during the pandemic, I did the same thing everybody else did. I think that we all basically hid and ate our way through it, right? I gained more weight than I had realized until we kind of started to come down emotionally, and it was like, wait a minute, my clothes don't fit anymore. Oh yeah, okay, that's why, because I ate my way through this. So I think part of it is, we have a large group of people who they were working remotely. Some of them still are. They were living more sedentary lifestyles than the past. They were eating easier foods and comfort foods more than before. And so maybe in some ways there's this thought of like we need to reemerge from that mindset.
You know, what you're saying is so important and it's so true. However, I'm just going to show the other side of that. We're not living in the Second World War. To look at some of the horrors that humanity has gone through, um, deep depressions, not psychological depression, but the depression, people jumping out of windows because they lost everything. Taking a look at the Dark Ages. For goodness sakes, before the Age of Enlightenment, the Renaissance, and scientific revolution, we had dark ages where books were burned, and there have been horrific traumas that society or humans have had to face over the years. The pandemic doesn't pale compared to
Oh
all
yeah, yeah.
awful things. And so it shines a light on a certain element that we all have, myself included. It's a weakness. It's it's a need for the teddy bear. Giving students teddy bears during the pandemic it's like, how much do we need to comfort ourselves and tell ourselves we're okay and everything's okay for us to gain that resilience and self-confidence that is so innate in our human psychology. It's one of our greatest gifts, the problem solving, the courage, the resilience, the picking ourselves up and dusting ourselves off and getting back out there. Instead, we're still making excuses for the lack of grit. And again, maybe we need to do that. Maybe we all need to help ourselves and each other right now because something is amiss. And again, I don't know if it's evolutionary in as far as our species. And it's interesting to me that this is so broad. It's not just in certain countries. It's like it's spreading this loss and sadness, and it makes an interesting composite that artificial intelligence at the same time is rising and getting more attention and more momentum. Not AGI, not artificial general intelligence, but narrow AI in the form of large language models, LLMs, and generative AI that is becoming a bit of a partner to many of us who know how to use it and want to use it to help our own reasoning and help ourselves think better. So I would suggest that we really develop more access to people learning how to use ChatGPT or Claude or there's one called Grok, to use these to not to cheat, not like a pill, not to say I'm too weak, but what can I do? How can I be better? And I use it myself as a type of psychoanalysis. And it's really interesting because it is part of my longevity routine. It's part not only of it's not physical. I don't go to the gym to use ChatGPT, but I utilize it as a tool to help my psychology. And this is really important. For example, if I have to work on something, maybe I'm in a debate, a televised debate, or maybe I'm writing a chapter for a book, and I'm going to be touching on a controversial topic. I want to make sure that I'm being level-headed, that
Mm.
I'm using my wits as the best I can. So I will ask, let's just say chat, for example. I will put in what I've written and say, I wrote this. I want to make sure that I'm being fair, that I'm being objective, that I'm not putting in a bias. And could you help me analyze it? And I will get
Oh,
back. Okay, here are some areas where you are showing a little bit of prejudice or bias, and here are areas where you're maybe being a little bit, too mancy pansy, or whatever. And I always check with the LLM too. And I'll say, don't flatter me, because many of them will flatter us. Oh, this is great,
yes.
you're wonderful. We don't want that. That's another teddy bear or warm, fuzzy blanket when we need to get our grit on and be stronger human beings. So I'm really careful saying, don't flatter me, give me the truth. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of something I had read in David Sinclair's book, where he talked about pushing yourself outside of your comfortability zone, not just for human beings, but also for plants. He was writing something about some of the highest plants in terms of antioxidants and phytonutrients that we need are ones that grow in very sparse conditions.
Ah,
And they make those nutrients, they make those antioxidants to help their own cells regulate that hard environment, right? And he was
yes.
saying in a similar way, like things like the Wim Hof method come to mind, right? Where he was, he
Mhm.
was like, if you're comfortable at your temperature all the time, then that may not be good. You may want to have it a little bit warm or a little bit cold, you know? And there were lots and lots of little tips that he had in his book
Yes.
about just being a little bit uncomfortable sometimes to kind of
No,
push your
you
body.
you just nailed it. I think that's probably the most important thing that we've said so far in this session. And I got it not from that David Sinclair. I got it from David Eagleman, who was a friend of
Mm,
mine. He had a TV show on the brain. Very bright person. He invited me to speak at a conference he was working with, called Being Human. It was in San Francisco at some beautiful old theater that they just renovated. And he wanted me to talk about my experience with neuroplasticity. And if your audience doesn't know him, he is brilliant neuroscientist, I should say. And I asked him, I said, my mother had dementia, and I took care of her for the last few years of her life, and it was really sad and daunting. And many of us are experiencing this, have
yeah.
experienced it, or will experience it, especially with the rise in dementia. I said to him, my mother was highly intelligent. She was very curious. We would spend hours at the library together doing research, and she would do crossword puzzles every day. And I said, what did she, why? And he said, you don't do the same thing every day. You have to challenge yourself, make yourself uncomfortable. And I never forgot that. And I have it in my longevity routine. I call it legitimate longevity, get lit. And by getting lit is like in the music I'm thinking about, hammer, get legit, too legit to quit. And that's what we need. We need to get our grit on and be too legitimate in our longevity commitment to quit. And that's what you're saying about David Sinclair. And my friend David, the neuroscientist, said, challenge yourself, get as uncomfortable as you can in doing something,
Yeah.
and where you want to quit and don't. And then before you know it, you're going to be on the other side. And then it's going to become a new neural pathway. It's going to be ingrained in your psyche and in your brain, and you'll just find it becomes a habit. And those, again, going back to the diet pills, yeah, I think if people need the diet pill to stop eating or to reduce their desire for food, please do it. Don't be ashamed of it. We all shouldn't, just do what you need to do to be healthy. That's the most important thing. But along with that, please train your brain to get uncomfortable and stick with it, and do that exercise of being uncomfortable, because it's going to build more stamina, more grit, and more self integrity and authenticity, I think.
Well, what when you talked about your mother, and I'm terribly sorry. I mean, that is such a tragic experience to watch a loved one decline like that. But that reminded me of, I guess, the increased caretaking role that all of us have. The boomer generation right now is between 60 and 80 years old on average, I believe. It could be a little bit older now.
Yeah.
And that is the largest cohort of our population demographic. And there are negative birth rates in most of the Western world. So we're looking at a sea change in our population. And I think we're also looking at a lot more caretaking for everyone, right? Younger people are going to have to be healthier and stay healthier because they are caretaking older people.
Yes, and that's so true. I'm so glad you said that. And another thing, just to add to that, the statistics on it, every day, 10,000 people turn 65 every day. So, okay, I just finished writing a course for the Geneva College of Longevity Sciences. As you mentioned, I'm faculty there. And in that course, it's a lengthy course. It's in five sections. One section I devote to the generations and the caregivers and how retirement's changing, how the hard edges between what you're supposed to do at certain ages has changed enormously, but that the family composite is changing. In the olden days, we used to have families, we had different generations
Yeah.
living together. Remember reading about it and seeing it in some old TV shows like old westerns or whatnot. Today, we're starting to go back to that in United States, other countries like in Japan, Asia, they still do it. It's part of their family structure largely, and in many Western Asian countries and the Middle East. But in the United States, we would leave, we spread out, got away from family. Um, so we're seeing that families are taken care of, and many generations, they're called multi-generational families. Um, that support structure is so important. And absolutely what you said, we need our younger generation to be healthy, to take care of the older generation, but not only that, but to want to. And there's that, it's interesting because it buttresses something else that is a societal issue amongst some generations. I don't know if it's the X or the G generation. I don't think it's the millennials, but it's the um, die. It's the go ahead and just die. There's a rebuttal to the baby boomers wanting to live longer, because it's the baby
Mm,
boomers who are really at the frontier of the longevity, not only the
yeah.
science, but the industry and the movement. And it dates back to, I mean, this is also in my course where I talk about the history of longevity, and I'm writing a chapter for Elias Standler's book on longevity called The Evolving Lexicon of Longevity, the terminology and how the field has evolved over years. But tying this together, there is a segment of society that is opposed to people wanting to live longer. It's just go ahead and die. And I think it's boomer. I think it's go ahead and die boomer. I can't remember
Mm.
exactly. Maybe I don't want to remember because it's such an awful thing to think about. But um, I don't think there's an understanding of the love of life and why people do want to be healthy and live longer. It's not out of ego. It's not out of wanting to, run the world. It's out of an incredible awareness and appreciation for the life force. We're alive, thank goodness, and death could come at any moment, and often does when we least
Well,
expect.
and I mean, going to that, it's an interesting sentiment. I haven't read that one. That this go ahead and die boomer sentiment.
Hmm.
I can imagine that there are people who are feeling bitter and disenfranchised in younger generations who might express that. But I think part of it, like I'm 49 years old now, and my mother is in her 80s. My father is close behind, and it's easy to maintain these big sweeping views as generalizations, but when it's people that you love, as you well know, when it's people that you love and care for yourself, those attitudes change. And the same thing for me goes to the health aspect of it. It's like, okay, if I can make better choices and I can share that with them, and fingers crossed, if I can get them to come on board with some of that, that helps them stay with our family longer. And then another aspect of this that I have explored, and again, it's difficult to get older people to do it, are information technologies like the Apple Watch, and there's a Ring, and there are all sorts of these bio telemetry tracking devices that are so useful for older people.
but they're difficult. I was given the Aura ring by a dear friend of mine, Joanna Benson, in Warsaw, Poland, who runs the longevity clinic there. And I wore it, and it became too difficult for me. It was, it took too much work. Another thing, um, I have arthritis, and sometimes I
Mm,
can't use my thumbs, my fingers the way I would like to. And texting is difficult. So one thing that
yes.
is missing here, what you're saying is perfectly true, but at the same time, we need better designers, better engineers, and looking at product design to create these rings, watches, apps, so that those of us who are over 70 or people that are have difficulty seeing or you're using their hands or fingers in agile ways, that it's more user friendly. I can't even open up jars anymore. They're
Yeah.
very difficult. I have to call my husband, could you open this jar for me? And this is normal. I don't like it, but it's normal. And so I think that while there are all these wearable devices and apps to help, they're not designed in a way that really meets the needs of people who are experiencing different types of slowing down in their joints, in their fingers, in their eyesight, as well as the arthritis, which is unfortunately something that comes with aging. And
Okay.
so, yeah,
Yeah, so it's not quite there. It could be
no,
on the
it's
way,
not.
but not there. Now, I wanted to ask about NAD boosters. And this is an area of personal interest for me. I've started taking NMN. I'm actually taking 1,500 milligrams a day of NMN right now, which is a pretty sizable dose. And I've been reading about various studies on it, and they're all pretty positive studies. I believe there was a study treating young people for weight loss with it, but then there have been studies treating geriatric patients for muscle performance. And again, going back to Dr. David Sinclair, if I remember correctly, he'd said that it helps to demethylate DNA and has all sorts of positive effects. Do you do any NAD supplements?
It was interesting as I do NAD plus, and I don't do it every day. I'm not a big fan of taking lots of vitamins and taking lots of supplements and injections and all this stuff. I like just, doing, I like doing it the hard way. I don't know why, I just do. Um, Here's the thing, everyone's body is different. For example, I was in a documentary of my life, my lifestyle, for a producer who worked with Brian Johnson. And she was looking at alternatives to Brian Johnson's particular protocol. And so she wanted to use me as a comparison to Brian Johnson, a different protocol, doing it differently. Those of us who aren't billionaires and don't have
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of MRIs and do all sorts of stuff. I'm more of the natural person. And so what shocked me is that today there's over 150,000 people who have seen this. Now, I didn't expect this. I thought it was just a small documentary about my daily life, and I'm very raw in it. Nothing was edited out. It's just me doing me, and making all my foibles and whatnot. But what's beautiful is that 150,000 people plus have watched this. Now, the comments are really interesting, and I participated because it's wonderful to communicate with people who are learning about longevity. In some of the comments, people keep on saying, well, what supplements are you taking? What peptides are you taking? What are you taking? And I'm not an expert. It's not my area of expertise. I have taken some peptides, but I don't take lots of peptides. I don't take lots of supplements. I don't take lots of stuff. I don't take metformin. I don't take mycin. I don't take any of that stuff that a lot of people say to take. Why? It's not proven.
Okay.
Another thing is, for those of us who have had life-threatening diseases such as cancers, we need to be very careful. I can't take human growth hormone like other people can take
Yes.
because it could cause my cancer to act up. I can't take a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Greg Fay at 21st Century Medicine, where I trained. Um, he was doing experiment and on to use men first then women, and I wanted to be part of it, but I couldn't because the experiment in what he's working on, which is really, really brilliant, it doesn't work with my body because, again, those of us who've had cancers, it could have an adverse effect. So you need to be really careful. Um, One thing I am a proponent on is hormone replacement therapy for men and for
Okay.
women. I've been on HRT since I was 48 years old, and I was on it when it was originally Premarin, which is horse piss, basically. They got the estrogen. It's awful, but that's all they gave us. That's all we had. And today we have bioidentical estradiol. We can get it in a patch, we can get an injection, a cream, a pill. There's so many different ways that we can take estrogen and the testosterone and
Yeah.
then the other HRT composite that we need to balance things out to prevent adverse effects that can be a result of too much estrogen. So that's really important to know about. But that I am a sole supportive of, and I think it's really helped my body, but I don't take any type of muscle enhancing drugs or anything. I just do the hard work because I love it. Now, NAD plus, I started taking that because another dear friend of mine kept on saying, well, you've got to do this, you've got to do it. But I'm not taking it because David Sinclair said to, because there was a cautionary tale there. He exaggerated some information, and maybe it wasn't intentional. We don't know. I don't know. I do not know him personally, but I just am very careful about scientific research and exaggeration and all the emphasis on taking so many supplements and pills, and everyone says this is the breakthrough, or this is going to keep you young forever, and it just simply is not true. There is no pill today that anyone can take that is going to reverse our aging, slow down aging, or stop aging. We're still aging. However, while we're aging, we can do it better. We can't
Yeah.
stop time. We're still going to age. You're still going to be a year older a year from now. That's physics. Time, it happens. However, the effects of aging, the detrimental cellular breakdown, the senescence, the different zombie cells in our body, the damage brought on by aging is what we can mitigate. And epigenetics is one way, and David Sinclair is very knowledgeable about that and helped to make it really popular and not a pseudoscience like it was once thought of. But we really need more rigorous science. And in my work as in the field of science, working in a lab and having scientific research and published paper and actually having new information or breakthrough or a new discovery, I know that it has to be exact, it has to be duplicate over and over and over again. If you can't duplicate it, it's not solid. So we have to prove these things. Maybe the FDA is too staunch and too ridiculous. I'm someone who believes in the right to try. And so I'm opposed to the FDA's bureaucratic nonsense, but I think it is important to have regulatory organizations looking at the efficacy and integrity of the research that's being done. So going back to NAD or NMN, all this, you have to test it for yourself. And people are selling these supplements to make money. And
Yeah.
that's something to pay attention to. So I always look to see what is the company behind it. When I hear someone saying, I'm the first to have ever done this, I'm the best at it, even in biohacking, I mean, I love biohacking. I've been doing it for 40 years. I made a film about my biohacking, and I think it was 2008, and it was featured at the Moscow Film Festival. But I've never said I'm the first biohacker to make a film that premiered at a film festival, because it doesn't really matter. Biohacking, we've been biohacking for eons. No one coined the term, it's been around for a long time. In the arts, biohacking was bio art or body art. And if you look at Stellark, the artist, well, he grew an ear on his arm. Remember that? So he was biohacking years ago. And then there is the French artist named Orlan. She biohacked her face and looked like the Mona Lisa. She became
Mm.
extremely famous for that. So there have been artists for decades who have worked in body art, bio art, and biohacking since gosh, going back to the 1950s and earlier. So the fact that it's now become mainstream, and I have to say to shout out to Dave Asprey, who I like very much, and I think he's made it so popular, and he deserves the credit for that, to be sure. But biohacking is not new. Prosthetics is not new. This has been going on, and the blue zones aren't new. They were doing them in Greece and Rome and the Taoists, etc. But what's important is that we're doing it today. And going back to the the NAD plus or NM and whatever one wants to take, make sure that you're getting the best that you can, and just watch your body, see if it's working for you or not.
Well, what I'm picking up from this is really what you're saying is there is no easy button, and the quest for an easy button basically may inhibit or prevent people from making lifestyle changes that would lead to actual better health, right? In other words, we're looking for that magic pill. We're looking for that button to push to say, okay, everything is going to be good. You know, here's my money, make me healthy. And you can't do that. You have to do the work.
You have to do the work. And I'm so glad you said that. Was so much more articulate than me. Thank you for saying it in a smart way. The I think one of the important things here is what we do know, and this is a fact. It's been researched and it's proven through antiquity to today. Lifestyle changes, that the what we eat, our nutrition, our exercise is so important. I think exercise is the most important, and our neuroplasticity, brain exercise as well, our relaxation, sleep, meditation, whatever one wants to do, and to have people around you that love you and that you love and are not just going to pat you on the shoulder and say, oh, you're great, or thumbs up, thumbs up. I'm so sick of thumbs up. Just want people to be honest and sincere and be helpful to each other. And I think that having a set of good friends who will tell you when you're making a mistake, correct you when you're out of bounds, and bring you back to reality. I think that's so important. And I think if we have more and more of that, I think that longevity can show that stick around long enough for AI and nanomedicine. I think nanomedicine is the future of longevity myself. But I think this is really important. There's no quick fixes. We have to do the work. And I think epigenetics has proven that the genes don't have to switch on. So the DNA, our DNA, is not an absolute blueprint.
Hmm. Okay.
That's one of the biggest breakthroughs, I think, in not just theoretically, but in all practical sense, that our genes may not switch on if we live a lifestyle and practice the protocols that help us be as healthy as possible. And if they do switch on, maybe we'll not have the disease or the aging effect or the deterioration of cellular structures to the degree that we might have had we not slept well, eat well, been happy, and enjoy our lives.
Well, Natasha, I think that is a wonderful note to close on. So let me close things out today by, again, thanking you for your time. It is always a pleasure to have you on. It is an honor to be able to interview you on this topic. I would love to have you back on to talk more about it in the future. What I want to do now, though, is ask people, where can they learn more about the lifestyle choices that you're making? Again, you are a subject matter expert in this. I'm not trying to sell anything, but I do want to refer people over so they can learn more about what you are doing.
Okay, two places. I'm not a big social media person. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't care. I just want to live my life with my family and enjoy teaching and lecturing and whatnot. But on if you go to my website, I have up right up the top. It says longevity, and there I have the credentials that give me it. And you mentioned it. I have 3.5 years. I studied at the Yoga College of India in Beverly Hills. I have 5,000 hours in the gym lifting weights and weight training, sculpting muscle, etc. 50 years practicing a meditation, a daily cognitive plasticity, routine, and all the other elements. All of that is on my website, and it's just my name. It's so simple. It's just www.natashavita more.com, and you can put that in your video or
Absolutely.
for people. The other area is to watch the documentary. Again, it's raw and it's a little bit embarrassing some moments, but I think it's really good. And that has now it keeps on growing, over 150,000 people watching it and learning about longevity and some of my philosophy as well there. And that's on YouTube. And Tim, if you would put a link to that in
Oh,
your,
absolutely.
yes.
And do you know offhand, do you know the title of it? I can do some research and find it, but
I think it's called Strong at 75.
oh,
I think
okay.
that's what it's called. I can't remember exactly because it's, again, embarrassing. I don't flaunt my age. And so, but, um, and yes, I am strong, but yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
you put it in there.
Wonderful. Well, Natasha, excuse me. Natasha, let me thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you, Tim. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And I love the way that you crystallize on ideas and really put them out in a way that's palatable and tasty at the same time. So thank you so much for your clever thinking and true understanding and compassion for the future of humanity. I really do appreciate that.